Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Video Game Movies Shouldn't Suck panel. Thank you for coming to support the cause and to fuel the anger that we all have towards this dire situation. Our panel's going to introduce themselves. I'm Eddie LeBron of Blue Core Studios. I directed a bunch of video game fan films such as Mega Man and I'm finishing up a Sonic one starring Julia White and next week on Screw Attack we're releasing CVC Chun-Li versus Cammy. This week? Oh yeah, it's a Sunday. This week, yeah. This Tuesday. So let our panel introduce themselves.
All right, I'm David Horowitz, and yeah. Was anybody on the 10th floor last night? No? Okay, never mind.
You're good.
It's
pretty interesting.
It's an interesting story we might save for the end as a end of the day story.
Right. Cool. Okay.
Hey, I'm Chris Bain. I'm the writer-director of Metal Gear Office, and I also work on... Thank you. And I also work on the majority of Blue Core projects as writer, director, crew member, what have you. And that's
As do I.
I'm Brent Black, a.k.a. Brentalfloss. Thank you. I don't have any actual film credentials, but I will say that, when it comes to watching bad video game movies, my tears are my degree. So, yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah. And funny enough, we met face-to-face approximately a year ago because of the Mega Man movie, and the first thing we talked about was the first movie we're going to talk about. But let's get on with this, which is video game movies shouldn't suck. That's a pretty straightforward thing. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go through a brief history of the various video game movies and how they shaped the history of the video game movie, mainly because you think of the first major comic book movie, Superman, and how big of a success that was, and just the chain reaction of video game comic book movies after that, Batman, and then things went off a little wonky, but Spider-Man, it's just, right now, comic book movies are now seen a little more legitimately than they were, decades ago. As for video game movies, they're looked down upon, mainly because of the very shady history, which all began with a very sad event in history, which was the... Yes. So... where do we begin with this? Because I know you, Brent, this was the first thing, we went into a brief conversation about Super Mario Bros. When we first met. You were like, you're that Mega Man guy, and then you started asking questions about...
You said, you're that Mega Man guy.
And then
I have no vocal inflection now, so I can't be funny. You were saying?
I didn't know you were sitting next to me at that table, so...
Right, I didn't know who, it was kind of like, oh, we've been eating for an hour. Holy crap, it's you.
Yeah. So the first thing you and I briefly talked about was how Super Mario Bros. Was handled, and then you're like, Eddie, we need to talk. Because I know, I think out of many of the video game movies, that kind of pissed you off the most. Because I've seen a lot of...
Well, yeah, I mean, it was the first violation. It was the hardest hit. I didn't have any scars to protect me from that. So, I mean, it was awful.
Well, it was also... It's interesting because comic book movies started with one of the biggest characters, Superman. So video game movies started with probably the biggest franchise at the time. Mm-hmm. And aside from a horrendous production, falling behind schedule, directors were throwing coffee on the extras. It was quite a mess. And but oddly enough, the public wasn't too familiar with that back in '93, and a trailer was released, and I'm going to show you this trailer just so I can tell you the impact this trailer had back in '93. So here we go.
Where are we? I got a feeling we're not in Brooklyn no more.
They're brothers. They're plumbers.
Oh no! Not yet! Luigi!
They're on the trail of a kidnapped princess. and a mystical meteorite. It's incredible! That gives anyone who possesses it the power to rule the universe. Get me the rock! Come and get it, lizard breath! Now, they must rescue the princess.
Luigi!
Alien species escaping.
And make it safely back.
Later, alligator.
To our world.
Are you alright?
Before time runs out.
Shoot him! Look out, Mario!
Get him! Yes!
No, stop! No, not again!
Super Mario Brothers. This ain't no game.
All right.
Now, for those that were around in '93, I remember it slightly vaguely because I'm a youngster, but I still remember the times, and I've talked to people a little bit, yeah, like you, which this trailer surprisingly got a lot of people pumped about the movie, and I'm trying to figure out why until I realized, if you watch that trailer, you'll realize, and you probably guys do, that no shot lasts more than a second. It's subliminal, it's hard-hitting, it's just very, quick cutting. You can't process it, especially if it's the first time you've seen it. You can't exactly process what you're seeing. So you see two guys that kind of look like Mario and Luigi, you see dinosaurs, and you see a giant lizard reptilian, which, oh, that's Bowser, that's King Koopa, oh my goodness. So for youngsters, that are very hungry, yeah, and at the time, I mean, I don't know if we can assume that Dennis Hopper was King Koopa, but hey, I see Dennis Hopper. I don't know who he is, but he's cool and he's got interesting hair. But then the movie was released, and yeah, so the movie was released, and what are our initial opinions? Let's go back to '93, or as early as we've ever watched it in a count. Let's start with you, David.
I loved it because I never played Mario at that time. So I thought it was a nice science fiction film. A little crazy though, but
Yeah, I didn't play Mario that much around the time that came out. I remember watching the movie like all the time though, and I loved it. It was like the best movie ever, and I had nothing to compare to because I didn't play Mario that much. And basically, all I knew was that it was based off of a video game, and I assumed that they just made changes to make it work for the movie. But at the time, I loved it. Go for it. Uh-oh.
What? Excuse me. No, I'm not going to do that to you.
You want to go back to those days in history and account this?
Okay. So, not to be a fanboy of Mario, but by the time we were in 1993, there was a lot of the arguments that say this movie was good come from people that didn't play a lot of Mario, which is like, yeah, I don't know any. I don't know. I mean, like, to me, I think that's a fair argument, but this was not really marketed towards those people. I don't think anyway. They didn't make it. Okay, I'm going to start over. Here's the thing. There were like 3 different cartoons that established Mario and Luigi as, guys that both had mustaches. Fancy that. That went to a place called the Mushroom Kingdom that saved Princess Toadstool at the time, who eventually became Peach, but was definitely not Daisy, except in one game. There was a whole series of Valiant comic books where Mario was the brave one and Luigi was not, and they reversed that for no reason. My main beef with the film is that it doesn't validate the mythos that was laid out before the movie had happened, and there was almost, maybe not 10, but like 7 years of mythos to go on that they threw to the wind. That's all. That's how I feel.
Well, I remember loving, not the whole movie, I would replay the last 15 minutes because that was the first time you see them in the costume when it finally felt like a Mario movie. Right. So for years I never saw the first 60 to 75 minutes. Every time I rented a tape I rewound and rewound because, as a 5-year-old you're playing this and you're like, oh, I don't see them in the costumes yet. Fast forward, and then you get to the 65-minute mark and you're like, oh, hey, it's them, I guess. And then you see some kind of dinosaur and you're like, oh, that's Bowser, I guess. So I think it's well stated that as kids we have lower standards and you'll settle for anything. So as a Mario fan, I settled. I didn't want to, but there was really no other option. Unlike these gentlemen who didn't play Mario, so they had no standards, and they're like, "Oh, this is a great movie."
Which is actually the reason why I got Super Mario Land for Game Boy. That's actually why I got a Game Boy.
That's really unfortunate, David. But anyway, it's a given that this is kind of. It was released 2 weeks before Jurassic Park, so obviously it didn't do too well in the box office. Jurassic Park was a huge deal at the time.
The dinosaurs were a little bit better. Let's be honest.
The movie underperformed drastically, making only $20 million in its complete run out of a $45 million budget, which went over budget and had 5 directors. The original 2 directors were known for the 60-minute pilot for Max Headroom, which I saw, and I was very sad when I watched it, and I say, I can imagine these guys doing a Mario movie, and then it clicked in my head, and I was like, oh, shit. But the movie didn't do too well. It was critically bashed, and it kind of started the chain reaction, mainly because if Superman didn't do good, I don't think comic book movies would have, because even though it was it was yesteryear, many years ago, it kind of, the first step is the most important. It legitimizes it.
Right, it makes producers less afraid to try that kind of thing.
And they got credible actors, and they got a credible director who did TV for 20 years and just got off The Omen. And I mean, he went on to do The Goonies. So I mean, the guy's immensely talented. And the producers on Super Mario didn't put any money behind it. Bob Hoskins, I thought, was an okay choice, but I still try to understand why they got John Leguizamo's Luigi, especially in my memory, pretty early on in his career. I don't know if...
Yeah, he was relatively unknown at that point.
Yeah, and he still didn't look the role, and it kind of makes you wonder their choices in getting the director. I mean, Max Headroom was a very interesting... I don't know if anyone here ever saw because that's a pretty rare thing, but watching it was interesting because it was a whole nother universe, a whole nother world. It combined technology with something that was a little more organic, as opposed to this that's nothing but just Dino Hatton. And it kind of makes you wonder the thought process of the people that did Superman. They were able to and the weird thing about Superman is those producers were real dicks. They're like the pinnacle Hollywood producer. They're from Europe. They have this whole preconception of how a Hollywood film's supposed to work. And yet, these producers were able to assemble a better team than this. And do you know off the top of your head if Nintendo had any involvement in this?
I recently read an article about this. I think the thing is, Miyamoto did sign off, but it was one of those kind of things where, like, they were thinking more in terms of how to make the movie a new experience. And like you said, with Max Headroom, there was a lot of innovative technology that was going into it, but they didn't so much... I guess maybe they took for granted the fact, and I'm paraphrasing here, so don't like Wikipedia me, but or do whatever. The point is, it seems like the one thing that kind of they took for granted was that these people would be able to come up with a good story, because clearly the special effects for the time were pretty good.
Yeah.
They had some innovative stuff with, like, at the time, that whole, like, the going through the portal thing was pretty cool, and, like, the sequence of them falling through the space between was kind of neat. But I think they were thinking more in terms of the visual elements of it, bringing something that seemed as new as Nintendo had seemed 10 years before to the big screen. But I think they took for granted that a story does not always just write itself out of, I'm a plumber and I save a princess.
The unfortunate thing is I lost my train of thought. It had to do with the directors, but can you repeat the last thing you said? Because I had it.
I said Eddie LeBron is the handsomest man I know. I think what I said was that they took for granted that a story would just write itself with the material they had from the game, much less the mythos universe that had been created around it.
I don't know if it's known, but a lot of the producers were horrendously combatant with the directors because one group of people wanted to make it completely child-friendly. The directors wanted to make this an adult, pushing for almost an R, and they kept clashing throughout the whole period. And I mean,
Rated Mario. That was so dumb. Please unclap that somehow. That was not funny. Go on.
I mean, these directors, they were under the impression that they were of Spielbergian level. They had huge egos. They were thinking they were making the most artistic, action-packed movie ever, and the producers are trying to reel them in. Their two leads are getting drunk on a daily basis because they can't take this shit. And there's so much documented material on just how much these actors hated working on it. The directors were schmucks, and there were days in which the DP had to step in and direct, and then two other producers had to direct. And obviously, you can see it because the movie's in complete clusterfuck. I mean, you raised an interesting point, which is, if this wasn't named Super Mario Brothers, would have been more accepted at the time.
Would have been a nice movie. It'd be okay.
It would be an interesting B movie?
On the Sci-Fi Channel.
Okay, but that's quite a jump down from most people's standards. I think it's safe to say you're putting it in the league with Sharktopus.
But yes, do we have any more points on Mario? Because we're going through history. Any experiences? Because, as stated, you got something to say?
No, I just rented it too many times.
You rented? I rented it a lot too. I never bought the DVD. You bought the DVD.
Yeah.
You let me rip it, and
Because I think it's a comedy now, so I'm just. I watched it. Actually, I lost it because you played with it. So.
I've been given that DVD twice as a gift. What the fuck? Sorry, excuse me. There seemed to be what the fuck? There we go. So you thought I was going to be, politer, but I switched it around on you. Somebody interrupt me. Go now.
But it's apparent what's up? It's apparent that what the violations of this movie are. As a movie in itself, it's not that fantastic. The story is so-so. The effects, as you said, were pretty nice. The production value was pretty nice. Just the art direction in terms of design wasn't that great. And as a video game movie, and anyone who followed or loved Mario, is just a travesty. And it was the first in a long line of travesties. Because Hollywood, although this failed pretty big, it's no Heaven's Gate, but it did fail. Hollywood was like, okay, well, that didn't do too well, but, the comic book thing seems to be working. Maybe we can, push forward. There's got to be some kind of property, because everyone wants a property. Property sell. You can do merchandising. So the next came Street Fighter, which is... What do you got to say? Raul Julia. But the unfortunate, as a kid, I never got to finish watching this movie.
Never got to finish watching.
No, but I did end up finishing watching it, but it was just.
It's not in theaters.
It's kind of, what do you expect when you hear a Street Fighter movie? You expect a fighting tournament, your favorite character is fighting, and your favorite character is being well represented. There was no fighting tournament. The fighting was awkward. And as you said, the only character that I can buy because he's so awesome is Bison, is Raul Julia. Even if he's not 100% pitch perfect, it's one of those situations when Heath Ledger was announced for the Joker, people were iffy about it, but he's such a great actor, and you saw what came out of it. So, but the movie actually did pretty decently overseas. Okay, much better than Mario. Let's relive our takes on this. Let's go back to the past and remember the impact. Anything to say, Dave?
I actually didn't really like it because I played Street Fighter. It was more like what G.I. Joe should have been, maybe, because it's actually got, we don't have to worry about a rise and then he gets locked up and there was no Cobra. But the thing is, though, they got some of the costumes down. I'm really disappointed about Cammy's costume. As a guy, I'm disappointed. Yeah, I'm still in remorse. Yeah, Chun-Li's costume sucked too. But overall, the story was not Street Fighter by any stretch of the imagination. So, and I was forced to watch it.
You, Chris?
First of all, Van Damme isn't American. Isn't his character supposed to be an American soldier? I mean, that kind of always gets me. But okay, here we go. When I was a little kid, this came out when I was really young. So again, I wasn't familiar with Street Fighter. I just saw a bunch of people in costumes fighting, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. So I watched it over and over again, just like I did Super Mario.
I think you make some valid points. Here's the thing. Did anyone ever think of Guile as like the main staple character of Street Fighter? Ken and Ryu sort of seem to be these staple characters, and I feel like, not that they have a whole lot of, not that they're infused with a whole lot of natural character in the game, but it's like I was ready to follow them, and the fact that you're going to go, no, it's the American GI, yeah, but we're getting a Belgian, yeah, it's like, okay, go on. Take puff pass. Keep telling me what your plan is there. But I feel like I'm sort of bouncing off what you said, Eddie. There's a fundamental problem with this movie. Was there fighting in the street? I don't think so, and if there was, it was not. Like maybe one little bit. I mean, they sort of cleverly, to their credit, found out a way to make almost all 16 of the Super Street Fighter characters have a reason to be there. Like E Honda, I think, was like the cameraman, and like was Chun-Li like a news reporter or something? Yeah, that was kind of clever. But it's like, and just to sort of foreshadow what we're going to talk about here in a little bit, it's not impossible to do a movie about a fighting tournament that is well done. Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat are basically two sides of a similar coin, but Street Fighter, they decided to kind of make this cutesy explanation for why all these people would be in the same place, but they didn't actually do what was in the game. And I think this is a running theme that we're going to find today, is that it's like if they had read the instruction manual, it would have taken them exactly one poop, that much time, just to find out what the game is about. Instead they went, Street Fighter, I've got a great idea, no fighting, a Belgian playing an American, and let's have Raul Julia die. That's pretty much how it went down. It was really awful.
His very, very last movie.
And I love Raul Julia, by the way.
And I saw, when doing research for this panel, I was watching a bunch of old interviews regarding Street Fighter, and it was really sad just hearing him talk, just weeks before he died, saying why he did this movie. He did it for his son. He had his whole family on set, and just the way that he had the images edited in these interviews, it really got to me, and I'm like, this had to be his last movie. That's
really sad.
That's really unfortunate. But let's not all get somber. No, we miss him, and he's a great actor, and he's the primary reason why people still bear this movie. So I can't stand Van Damme in this. I can't. If you can understand what he's saying half the time.
That war is canceled speech sucks. It's so hard.
What?
The war is canceled speech sucks.
Yeah, the one that he just like at the little.
The war is canceled.
At the podium.
You can all go home.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna fight. It's like no soldier would ever react.
You can either go home or you can go with me.
It's funny. It's like he's got a pretty thick accent, and so does Arnold Schwarzenegger. But for some reason, I'm totally willing to accept Arnold Schwarzenegger with names like John Kimball. But I can't accept Van Damme as Lieutenant Guile. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. But he's just not. I mean, he's not charming in this role.
Guile's the All-American, and
right.
Yeah, he's not All-American. So, but yeah, it's fortunate that over the last few years this has gotten a cult following. It's quite not as bad as we once thought it was, but it did lead to even worse things, which we'll touch upon later. But it was one of those situations, just like Super Mario, in which it didn't follow the story. Which now we're seeing the consistency here, which is it didn't follow the story. It didn't understand the main focus of it. It didn't primarily understand its audience, but it made money. Not as much money as the next film, which is Mortal Kombat. Which, it's not perfect, but as we stated, it was the first legitimate step in the right direction. Right.
It tried.
It did try. Well, sum it up. It's a fighting tournament. All these characters get together. They gotta win.
Dragon.
And, they fight. Someone wins, and there's interesting effects. I guess the only, big violation, it wasn't rated R, but there was some violence that tailored to kids, like when Scorpion got his head cut in half.
The thing about Mortal Kombat is it's kind of like there were all these things at that time. It's gotten a bit more of a gray area now, but I think in the early to mid 90s, there was this thing where people started making material that they knew was a little bit too mature for kids, but they knew that kids were the ones enjoying it. Beavis and Butthead was being enjoyed by me. I was 10 and 11, but it was, there was still, I think, a content warning. South Park a little bit later on was like, nobody should watch this, TVMA. Who was their audience? Kids. I mean, adults too, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, there's this sort of, not double standard, but kind of thing where like they cover their ass by saying, hey kids, you shouldn't do, there's a parental blood control thing, like anyone's going to voluntarily do that. But I think that, rated R would have been a mistake, because it would have cut off so much of their audience. And South Park, the South Park movie, by contrast, was trying to go for something, their whole movie was about being a dirty movie. But if this movie was smarter than Mario Brothers in being the right balance of what it was in the game, but also being accessible, literally, to its audience.
Absolutely, and it made a profit. Fortunately, unfortunately, I mean, the director of this went on to kind of mess his hands around with other things. But regardless, I still have a few gripes with this movie, but nothing major. Dave, go back into the past. Tell us about Mortal Kombat.
I enjoyed it. It was definitely, like Eddie said and Brent said, that it was a very good step in the right direction. And there's certainly some things that should have been fixed, like reasoning for some of the fighting, not just like, okay, I'm going to tease you and you fight me and blah, blah, blah. But, yeah, it was not Street Fighter. So it's a very good thing. I'm happy about that. And I was actually looking I was looking forward to the sequel. I'm like, oh my God, the second one's coming out. Yeah. All right. Sweet. Shiva's in it. She's going to fight. No, she's going to get killed by a bird cage.
I forgot that.
I wasn't done, but to go on. No, go.
Stop fighting, guys. Jeez.
Fight. No. Yeah, they didn't fight. Yeah, no, there was just a lot of stuff that like Sub-Zero's back. Yeah. Oh wait, what? No, he's not Sub-Zero.
We're going on to that next.
Yeah. So anyway, going.
So believe it or not, despite the fact that I didn't play a lot of Mario and a lot of Street Fighter, I actually played a lot of Mortal Kombat when I was a little kid. That goes kind of back to what Brett said. So when this movie came out, I loved it, like I did the other two, but in a different way, because I was familiar with all the characters. They stayed true to most of the costumes, and they made subplots for all the characters, and it was a solid film. It wasn't great, but it was a solid film, and it was enjoyable. And I personally think it's probably one of the best video game adaptations. Yeah.
I just feel like the thing about this movie was it was the first video game movie that, without saying this, in the title somehow, the subtext of this movie was, what you think is important and memorable is what we think is important and memorable, because you think it's important and memorable. You're watching it and going, oh my God, the thing I played on my TV is now on the screen, but it looks better. This seems recognizable to me, which our standards should be higher, but at that point they totally weren't. after, not to get into the Ninja Turtles thing, but after a Ninja Turtles film that for me, I was like, this is not like the cartoon. What is this? Because it wasn't. And, other things like they ended up doing an Inspector Gadget movie that was like total horseshit and all this other stuff. I think adaptations to film, especially from strange media like video games or cartoons, that kind of thing, it is a difficult transition sometimes, but they succeed when they say the thing that clearly everyone loves and remembers about this is what we're going to build it on. We're not going to do our cutesy little take on it. We're not going to try to paste these characters into the movie we were just going to make anyway. We want to validate why people like this and share it with a larger audience, and I think that's what this movie succeeded at.
I agree. And it's interesting because as a kid, your expectations are much lower than they are when you're an adult, but it mattered to me that it was a tournament and they were fighting. Something so simple. It mattered to me so much as a kid because I couldn't sit through Street Fighter. I never was able to make it 10 minutes without stopping. I watched that movie mainly because I watched it in 10-minute blocks over the course of like 5 years.
I'm starting to get the sense that you don't usually watch one movie at a time, like with the whole thing. You're like, I rewound it to the last 15 minutes. I watched 10 minutes over the course of 5 years. I chopped this movie up into little bits and I ate it. Do you ever sit down and watch the whole thing in one sitting?
The first movie was Mortal Kombat that I sat from beginning to end because it made sense. I was able to stomach it as a fan. I'm like, all right, they're setting this up. They're fighting. Liu Kang wins. This is great. Okay, I'm going to watch that again. And I watched it 2 weeks ago, and I sat through it, and I was just like, okay, that's still not bad. It was a step in the right direction. Right. Until next year. Mainly because, with the game Mortal Kombat 2, the whole goal is to up the ante and to step it up. You would assume there'd be more hardcore fighting, a higher budget. The original director, yay or nay, wasn't brought back. The cinematographer from the first one was brought back. And, of course, he didn't have experience as a director. And we've already touched upon the lack of fighting. There's a lot of talking. There's a lot of explanation, which I think one of the bad things is it's all right to explain if it leads to a fight. To explain just to walk and explain some more is not a fighting movie. So
it's exposition.
Exposition.
And they left out 2 characters in the movie. And the original cast.
Yeah. There was
Liu Kang came back.
Liu Kang, which I guess kind of eased the pain, but it says a lot about the actors that they didn't want to come back. So, they probably read the script and they're like, no fucking way. Because
Sonya go and do Billy Madison?
Sonya did go do Billy Madison, which was a step, yes, a much better choice.
She was the girlfriend character? Was she? The blonde. Yeah, I didn't put that together. Yeah.
And she did a better performance in that movie, unfortunately, but hey, what can you say?
I think the thing about, are we going down the line or can I just jump in on this one?
Do what you gotta do.
I think the thing about Annihilation, which I also saw in theaters, we all probably in this room have heard of movies like The Room and Troll 2 and stuff like that. And we talked about sci-fi movie earlier. There's just a certain thing that's sometimes kind of hard to put your finger on. But to me, that a movie has this certain quality when, here, do this with me, when you're sitting and watching the movie and then you slowly look at each other like this. And it's hard to put your finger on, but man, when you're watching the movie and like, what are we watching? That guy's in that guy looks like he got that skull mask at Chuck E. Cheese. I feel like, I remember just thinking, what is this? This is it was a disillusioning moment because, I don't know that I've ever seen a sequel that was such a disappointment after the first one was actually pretty good.
Especially with the way the first one ended, where you had this big, monstrous emperor.
Yeah.
And then it became what it became.
Meanwhile, in the shitty movie. That's what it went to.
But yes, Dave, you touched upon it, but Annihilation, go.
Yeah. It sucked. Oh man, I didn't even get to see this one in theaters. I saw this in the early 2000s actually, on DVD. I'm like, I spent $10 on this. But yeah, no, you had all these awesome characters, and you had, like I said, Shiva was in there. You brought back Sub-Zero, who was his brother. Who else was in there? Who else was in
Everybody
there?
else.
Everybody else. Cyrax and the other one. Smokes. Yeah. Yep. And nothing happened except. Yep. All these characters were in there and they did nothing. Why?
They strike the pose and then walk away.
What was the runtime for this?
For the movie?
Yeah, because they had probably plenty of time to fight. But the thing is, though, there was no reason for this film. They should have just left it with the first one. I don't care how much money they made or thought they were going to make.
Well, then again, I mean, Hollywood is always motivated by money.
I'm motivated by money.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I mean, if you want to make a franchise or a series, you try to protect it, and it looked like they didn't protect it. They spent less money, even though the first one made a nice chunk of money. And now there was no more Mortal Kombat movies because this one just didn't do that well. It did $50 million compared to the international gross of the first one, which I think was like 175. Which, I mean, on a decent budget is a pretty good thing to make on a video game movie, as history has shown us. Chris, Annihilation.
Well, the thing that was good about the original Mortal Kombat is that they worked the combat into the storyline. It made sense. Like, the whole movie is revolved around the tournament, and all these characters have lives outside the tournament, and there's a reason why they're just fighting one after the other. But in the second one, they tried to like make the scale of the film really epic, and they're just kind of going and fighting each other, and it's like they wake up in the morning, who am I going to fight today? And it's kind of it's crazy. They're just going and fighting each other.
It was unmotivated.
Yeah, unmotivated fighting, you know.
Which I think hurts a lot of the video game fighting movies is when you have an unmotivated fight, why should I care?
Right, exactly.
Because that's the big thing about a lot of major martial arts movies, especially like Jackie Chan movies. I love Police Story. It's just a fight is always much better when there's something on the line, and it's always much better when it's motivated. And a lot of these bad fighting video game movies, it's fighting for the sake of fighting, which 9 times out of 10 doesn't jive and doesn't equal the good movie. So.
Just to chime in, I would call that a violence porno. Because here's the thing. In a good fighting movie, like you said, we have a reason to fight, and we have stakes, and one of us is going to win, and that will change the course of the story. In a porno, somebody order a pizza, bang, bang, bang. It's the same thing. Somebody order a pizza, get over here. Like, I mean, like, it's the same thing. We don't really need a reason. No, I meant the scorpions. Never mind. I meant his long chain with a thing on the end of it. Point is that it's like, no, you can just smell it on a movie when, like you said, when things are unmotivated.
Yeah.
That's all. I'm just agreeing with you in my own special way.
Violence porno. That's a pretty good summary. So it's worth noting we are going to skip a few films because the 90s was more of a pivotal time, but we're going to breeze across some that is just apparent as to what's wrong with them. So, I mean, it's at face value.
I haven't seen this.
I mean, it's bad. It's a given that okay. Brent, you've heard of this or not?
No, I was just saying I've actually never heard of this movie.
Okay. Well, it was a computer game, kind of an FMV, if you will. Yeah, I mean, it was an FMV, but it starred Mark Hamill and Tom Wilson, and yeah, it was a fun experience. It wasn't the most engaging thing, but for the time, it was pretty good quality video, pretty decent production value. They had actors, and the story
was it theatrically released?
Now let's look at the game first. The game.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were
The
talking
game
about
was
the
an
movie.
FMV. It was starring Mark Hamill and Tom Wilson, Malcolm McDowell. What's up? Well, that's the biggest issue with this is they did such a good job on the game. I think personally, in their acting roles, that it kind of boggles the mind why they ended up going with Freddie Prinze Jr. and Matthew Lillard and pretty much a major recast.
Well, wasn't Freddie Prinze Jr. in the Last Starfighter or something? Or
I don't know. I haven't seen that movie.
Oh, okay. Just look.
Yeah, but yes.
Freddie Prinze Jr., Matthew Lillard, you mean Shaggy?
Yeah, Shaggy and Freddy. They were in space together. So, wrap your mind. Yeah, but I mean, it's apparent what's wrong with this because I couldn't sit through a movie mainly because I just feel the biggest injustice is, I guess it's the Hollywood machine trying to tailor to the youngsters and the teenagers. Like, ooh, they're the pretty boys, and you got a hot girl. Because personally, it would have done a much better. It did horrible business, but I think it would have done much better if it was starring Luke Skywalker. I mean, that kind of makes sense. I mean, he may not be the biggest star, but he's Luke Skywalker.
So I think this calls into question a bigger question, which is, do video games, especially, I mean, this was, I guess, on the PlayStation or what, the computer, like it had like video and audio, like it wasn't like a plink.
It played full motion video.
Okay,
yeah.
so it wasn't a plinky plonky 8-bit game.
No.
It calls into question when games start to
Here
be
we
able
go.
to do that. I don't mean to be jumping on your next topic, but maybe
Yeah.
I'm hopefully cascading into it. When a game can offer you an experience that actually is wholly different than a movie that is an interactive story, do you need a movie?
That's a big point about maybe why this was unnecessary.
Yeah.
I mean, can't you just edit a nice, high-quality version of the game footage and release that on tape? I'm not in the mood to really play the game, but I wouldn't mind seeing the cutscenes. I mean, that became popular later, just taking cutscenes. Like Shenmue, the movie was just nothing but cutscenes from Shenmue.
But yeah, I said Shamu when you first said that. It's just whales just jumping and splashing for hours.
But I don't really have much to say about this just because it's pretty apparent. Do you guys have anything else to add?
Well, I think the fact that I've never heard of it before now says everything.
Same.
I heard of it. I never played the game, but I watched the movie and I still thought it was horrible.
Yay.
And why not Biff and Luke? I'd like to know.
Oh, there's so many funny bloopers involving those two. Oh, yeah? Yeah, like when I remember there's one, and this encompasses the chemistry between the actors, which makes you wonder why not. At the end of a take, Mark Hamill exits the frame, right? And Biff turns to a girl and he's like, "Is that Luke Skywalker?" And it's, I mean, you can watch it. The chemistry between these actors was fantastic and led to a lot of nice comedic elements within it. I mean, and serious elements. But it's just, when you get to a certain point, is this necessary? And we're jumping ahead to Tomb Raider. Now, for those that know, yes, I skipped Double Dragon. Nothing needs to be said about that. But it's two guys trying to save their girlfriend.
And then destroy Double Dragon machine.
Yes. So what can be said about that? Anyone have to say about Double Dragon? Because there's something to be said about that.
Double dog shit.
There we go. But I think this is a pretty pivotal movie, mainly because it was another return to getting legitimate people into a movie, getting legitimate budget behind the movie, and this was the first video game movie since Mortal Kombat to actually make a nice chunk of change at the box office. I haven't finished this movie entirely because it doesn't really, tailor to me, but from what I've seen, it was a step in the right direction. Nothing perfect, but Mortal Kombat was the first step. It would have been nice if this was the second step instead of Annihilation. Thoughts?
I thought it was okay. I didn't go see the sequel because I just thought it was an average film. And I didn't play too much of the games. I did play the first one. But, yeah, it was okay. That's my opinion.
Female Indiana Jones.
Yeah, it's a female Indiana Jones, but yeah, she's got boobs, she got ass. Yeah, but the thing is, though, that was it. So when I saw it,
Yeah.
what else does she have? Belly button. You want me to?
Yeah, I mean, Angelina Jolie was nice, but that was pretty much thank you.
That was it.
that was it for the movie, and I feel like I saw this movie. I don't remember a lot of what happens in it, and I feel like that the same goes for a lot of adaptations that I see. It's just like it's not very memorable, and I feel like video game adaptations should be memorable because the video games themselves are very memorable and they stick with you long after you play them. So that's what the movies should be like.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, mainly because we were discussing that, which is we were like, oh, do you remember seeing this? It's like, I don't remember a thing, and I'm like, me neither. Which says a lot about a movie. If you can't remember it, then it's not that great of a movie. even mediocre, good, borderline good movies, I'll remember.
Right.
But,
Yeah, I think the only thing I remember about this movie is Angelina Jolie getting out of the shower or something, and then there was like some big water thing at the end, and she was swimming, and that's all I remember from the movie. I don't remember anything like in between.
It's like
So
how I feel about
that's not
Scorpion King. It wasn't a bad movie, but I barely remember it.
Yeah, and no teeth, no traction. Okay. I knocked over cups earlier, but you're gonna ooh at that. All right. That's cool. That's cool. The point I was gonna make is this to me, this movie, it draws a line, and I'm curious to what you think, Eddie, because I think if somebody had asked, everybody would make a different movie based on a franchise. When you made the Mega Man film, for instance, you sort of did a combination of telling the story we all knew and loved, but really putting in some elements that weren't there before. And my question for the makers of this movie is, should you tell a story that actually validates story elements that came from the game, or should the first time that most of the world experiences this franchise be a brand new story? That draws a line like Mortal Kombat is pretty much the story of the game. Mario's like some weird marijuana cloud in the sky, and then Final Fantasy Spirits Within is like nothing in the universe of what we knew. So how was it introducing us to, you know what I mean? This was sort of like introducing us to a character, but not a story from the games, and that's kind of what I didn't like about it. Like validate what the people have already seen. I feel like that'll make them more excited about it. And it's like if the game was worth adapting, then validate the fact that there was something to it that wasn't just those two things there.
Very good point.
And those perfectly shaped eyebrows, actually, aren't they lovely? They're so nice.
I mean, it's a very good point. I mean, couldn't it be a staple in the mythos of the character? But then at that point, you have to make sure that story is something that can hold itself to the game, because when you take the element of actually playing the game, completely out of your medium, then you're relying on solely storytelling and filmmaking techniques, and if those are weak, you can't fall back on good gameplay. You got something mediocre, because there's a lot of games out there that may have iffy stories, but if the gameplay is fun enough, people are going to remember that, and not that many people remember this. We just remember it as a Hollywood movie, made some money, but it was a step in the right direction because, legitimize the property, get the right people behind it. They could have gotten better people, but a good step in the right direction. But I remember this movie. This was the first time I flipped my shit for a video game movie, because this was back in the time. Because you see, it's interesting that now I do all this video editing and all this high-tech stuff, but in my youth I was really behind owning a computer. So when this came on TV, a TV spot for this, 3 weeks before the movie came out, I was flipping my shit. I could not wait to see it, because Resident Evil 2 was a huge part of my early teen years. That game was my life. I had to play it over and over again. William Birkin was like the best villain in the world for me. I just couldn't fathom a movie. I was like, oh my God, they're gonna have this and they're gonna have that. I don't know who she is, but maybe that's Claire. I don't know. Let's go watch the movie. And I went to see the movie, and I was in denial for many years with this movie. And I'm angrier about it now because I found out what could have been. I mean, the whole point of the big inspiration of Resident Evil, one of the biggest, is George Romero's zombie movies. I mean, that's what inspired the games. I mean, many other elements, but it can always be traced back to that. And he was tapped to be the original director of this, and just imagine the movie that it could have been.
It was a faithful adaptation too.
Yeah.
Actually gonna have Jill and Chris and everyone.
Exactly. I mean, not to step ahead. I mean, has anyone seen the new stills of the new Leon for the new Resident Evil?
No.
He looks horrible. And I've been waiting forever for Leon to be in a movie. I thought he was going to be in the first. He wasn't. And after the second, I kind of gave up. And then I saw a still, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, these people just... And it's interesting. It's from the director of Mortal Kombat, and you would assume, and he always says, I play the games and I love it. One thing about this movie is that it kind of is another event that's not tied into the games, but at the same time, it feels so distant from it because it relies so much on being too slick, too stylized for the sake of being stylized, and yeah, and
Isn't the lead actress the director's wife or something?
the lead actress is I don't know if are they legitimately married. I think he just had her kids and they live together.
The movies are pretty much now, hey, look at my hot wife.
Yep.
That's every one of his movies, even Three Musketeers. So, which had 4 Musketeers, right?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. Yeah.
The Musketeer in Training.
But yeah, I can go on and on about what this movie has done to me, but let's move down the line.
Want to take it, Chris?
Oh, yeah. So I played, let's see, Resident Evil 4. I'm in the middle of Resident Evil 5. I played a little bit of Resident Evil 2. I didn't play all of the other games. But is there a creepy girl computer voice in the games? No, so they made it up for the movie. So that was terrible. and I didn't, at the time, I didn't play a lot of Resident Evil.
People does not need GLaDOS.
Yeah.
Whoa.
At the time, I didn't play that much Resident Evil, and I even thought that was stupid when I was watching the movie. When I played Resident Evil, there's a lot about those games that are like really freaky. You know, you play with the lights off, and it scares the crap out of you. This Resident Evil movie wasn't scary. I mean, were you guys scared when you watched it the first time? There
were jump scares.
There's nothing disturbing. It's like some kind of stylized action thing, and it should be scary like the games are.
You nailed it. You nailed it. I remember being in junior high and going to my friend's house after school. We played with the lights on at like 4 in the afternoon. And when you would get to those freaky bosses, I mean, these graphics were like amazing at the time. So if you look back and go, this is kind of like crappy looking, nah, we believed every bit of it. And you were living it. You know, suddenly this scary movie looking thing was after you and you had to kill it. So like we're all watching our friend play, we're like, kill it, kill it, kill it, kill it. He's like, ah. And it's like, it was fun because it was visceral and it was, like you said, like I wish this movie had, I mean, I just recently watched The Descent, which I went into it thinking, I don't really see how they can make a 2-hour scary movie of, hey, I'm in a cave, boo. But they did it. They did it because they knew what they were doing, and there's an element of that in Resident Evil. Not always startling you, but really visceral scares because you have to. You know what I mean? Like the claustrophobia of, oh man, I'm in the room with this thing, I have to kill it. It's scary, in a way that I've never experienced. They just didn't validate that in this movie. They didn't go there. It's like this director went, well, they tapped me to do this, so I'm going to do what I'd rather do anyway, and kind of throw the subject, what am I trying to say? Throw the original property to the wind. It was sad.
And he claims to be a huge fan of it, but I mean, if you're a huge fan of something, then you can go down to its core to what makes it work. I remember playing Resident Evil 2, and every time I played that game, there was not a day in which I had to have my mom at the end of the hallway. While she watched TV, I need to be able to see her. That way, if I had to call for help, she'd be right there. And then I would have to shut off the game when she walked away to do something else. And I'm like, I can't handle this. Yeah. I'm done with this. The movie didn't scare me once, except for maybe 1 or 2 jump scares.
He said the director said he was a big fan. I'd be a big fan of anything that was going to pay me like $1 million as well. So, instant fan.
Very true.
Have you guys played Dead Space? Okay, cool. So what if I told you I was going to make a Dead Space movie, and the lead is going to be a supermodel wearing skimpy clothing, and she's going to be doing backflips throughout the entire movie? How would you take that? That's exactly what happened here.
That would be the dirty parody movie Bed Space. More backflips than you've ever seen.
I've seen a lot of tentacle hentai to know where that's going.
Thank you. You're like if the Muppet guys in the balcony had just one of them.
But yeah, our piece has been said. I can go on and on, but the other movies after this, my interest kind of just went blah after the next movie. It was just. Now it's making money. I mean, it's the only legitimate video game property theatrical release right now that's actually turning, a profit. But I can't watch it. I just can't. I just stopped caring.
Yeah.
I can't care anymore. So
I have a theory that, because that's the thing, it has dropped off. A lot of them are really bad right now, but I have a theory that like once one is really good and sets the model, then they're going to start doing that. The way that like, you might not like Spider-Man as a comic book movie, but like there are all these weird things like the Phantom or whatever, and the Punisher, like the other Punisher, all these kind of bad attempts at doing the Avengers, not the was that a comic book or a TV show? Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? Like all these awkward kind of late 90s, early 2000s adaptations. And then, in my opinion, Spider-Man kind of turned the corner and they went, okay, let's take this seriously, guys. Let's try to really do this right. And they did. And like once they just do one of these, like I'm talking Zelda, I'm talking Metroid, I'm talking a big budget, a studio that goes basically doing, Eddie, what you did where you validated the culture of the game in the movie. Once that happens, then they're going to go, oh, we get it. We're finally not dumb assholes. Light, and it's like, and they'll, I hope anyway, sorry to, this is sort of on a tangent, but it's like, I'm losing interest in all video game movies because they're all kind of running together. Like, I know Doom was a long time ago, but like that was where I just kind of went, okay, call me when one is watchable, Anyway, I guess I'm gonna let you talk.
Yeah, since we're gonna be ending momentarily, we're gonna breeze through this, but we're gonna focus on one point, which is Uwe Boll. Do we have any summaries on this? Because there's one movie I want to touch upon that kind of is an interesting point. That's not Uwe Boll, but Uwe Boll thoughts. Go.
Nudity. Hot women, Christina Loken, and what's her name from Lois Lane, Smallville? What's her name? Oh, Erica Durance was in House of Dead.
Really?
Yeah, she was on the beach naked.
I couldn't think of that off the top.
Well, that was before the implants.
Oh. Chris, go.
Fortunately, I haven't seen. I don't think I've seen any Uwe Boll movies, but I've seen the person. I've seen. Yes, thank you. I have seen the person himself interviewed and talking, and he just loves himself, and I just don't like his personality. So I assume that his movies are just as unlikable as he is.
Worse. Or worse, yeah.
Let me tell you all a story about a guy named Uwe Boll at Walmart. None of these DVDs are movable. That's all I got.
Maybe. The only way I can sum up is the guy is a tool. I mean, he exploits the German tax law so he can continuously get money on movies he's making no money for, so he can continue buying properties and continue making shitty video game movies. And my biggest beef with him is the fact that I don't want to single him out, but after a few of his movies, video game movies to me don't feel validated anymore. They're just done. Every time, like,
the real life version of the producers from Real Crooks.
Very good. I don't know. I can go on for him. I should have just had a panel on him because the damage he's done is good. It's going to take something huge, which unfortunately Peter Jackson's Halo would have done, but it's going to take something huge to fix the damage he did. Because now people see the video game movies direct to DVD bullshit. So where do we go from here?
I'm telling you. Here's what it is, dude. Pixar does Mario or Joss Whedon does Zelda, and you're done. I'm not even a huge film guy. I'm just saying, if they would just hand it to somebody that knows what they're doing and gives a shit. That's all. Yeah, I think he's doing well in that department, but it's on your shirt. That's awesome.
But we all hate him. We laugh at him. He likes to box people who don't like him. No, not Josh Uwe. And onward to Silent Hill real quick. What can be said about this? Because I think it's
apparently nothing.
I mean, any additional thoughts? Because I think it's mediocre. I mean, it tried.
It's a solid movie. It's not. There's a few parts that are memorable, like the creature design, and there's some disturbing stuff. Yeah. And that guy with the barbed wire, like the the hogtie dude. Yeah, that was creepy stuff. But you know, it was a solid film. It wasn't terrible.
It was one of the better steps in the right direction.
Yeah.
Again, which this whole thing of forward, backwards, forward, backwards, forward, backwards. After a while, it kills the whole medium as a whole. So,
Right.
But I want to talk about this real quick. This is the final movie. I would say we're going to end on this movie mainly because I feel the damage has. It says a lot for that you have to reboot a franchise because the first movie wasn't that great, and then you end up making something that's even worse, essentially killing the franchise. And I don't know if we've seen fan videos that can bring it back, but I don't think Hollywood wants to help bounce it back. I think it's done with, which is really pissed off because, as we said, it's a tournament. They fight. What's so hard about that? I don't mind seeing a movie just about Chun-Li if it's her arc throughout the tournament, fighting and getting from point A to point B. I don't want to. Oh, thank you. I don't want to see the lead up into a tournament of her boring past. That's not even, appropriate. I wouldn't mind seeing something if it was, tailored to who she was as a character. But this movie was bad. It was boring. The fighting was weird. The special effects were sucky, and I can only sum it up with this one clip. And that one still, I mean,
That's the best cut.
but that video sums it off. There's a rapper singing about street fighting. Her dress is ugly. She's skinny as all hell. Her buns are non-existent. And
You mean the ones up here?
yes.
Okay.
Both buns are non-existent. So, but yeah, let's have our final thoughts on this and then wrap it up. So, Dave, Legend of Chun-Li, it sucks.
Yep. It sucks. I've only seen clips online. I can't sit through it. The trailer was more than enough for me. Yeah.
What's the name of the main actor? You guys know who I'm talking about. The cop? No one knows his name.
Yes, motherfucking Chris
Chris
Klein.
Klein. He's part of the reason this movie is so bad. The whole time he goes, he's like posing for I don't know, some kind of act.
I
or
love
something.
my job.
Yeah, he does this weird like hunch thing with his shoulders. He kind of walks around like, yeah, I love my job. Yeah, like he said. And yeah, all of his lines, he's kind of like greeting it like, yeah, punchline, but they're not punchlines. They're just the script.
That's an interesting point. Every line read is a punch. It's like a punchline to a joke he didn't say.
Yeah. Hello.
The thing is, it seems like every movie has different people in it that are more enthusiastic or less enthusiastic. Sometimes it's the star, sometimes it's the director, sometimes it's the writer. This movie seems like it was a big crew of people going, why are we here? I just get that idea from watching it. I mean, I've only seen a couple clips, and friends of mine making fun of it. We thought about doing like a Riff Tracks kind of Mystery Science Theater 3000 thing to it, but I haven't watched the whole thing. But it's like there's just this sense of like, who was the guiding spirit of this piece of crap? Who was like, yes, my creation has come to be.
So I mean, it's weird because a producer. I mean, it says a lot when a producer says, "You know what will bring this franchise back? The guy who directed Doom. We should bring him back and do it."
Finally getting what he deserves. Another movie to ruin.
But I feel this was the last major blow to what could be, the whole legacy of video game movies, because it got to a point where now they rebooted something, and they even failed on the reboot, which means that they didn't know what they did the first time around wrong, and that they had to do it wrong again to justify what they did wrong the first time.
Worse. Yeah. Was it in the same studio?
I don't think so, because I mean, honestly, if remaking the first one would have, I would have preferred them remaking the first one than seeing this, because at least you can stay on a line. But then, right with Legend of Chun-Li.
Well, it just wasn't timely either. It's kind of like when somebody leaves the room in a great mood, and then in the room there's really sad news, and everybody's like, oh, it's kind of, and somebody comes back in like, hey, let's have a party, and it's like, not the time, man. Like this movie just was like, hey, we're gonna do a Street Fighter movie. There's totally a reason. No, there's not. It's 2009. What are you talking about? Like they just didn't carve out. It wasn't timely. It wasn't right. They didn't go, yes, now is finally our time to tell Chun-Li's story. Like there was no reason to, and they didn't take the mantle and do anything with it.
Yeah.
I'm just angry about it. in general.
Yeah, I think we're gonna end quickly with Prince of Persia. Mainly, it didn't suck. Another step in the right direction, having a producer that has money behind it. I'm hoping desperately that after this, things might turn around, but the damage that's been done over the last 10 years, and I'm not saying this is a fantastic movie, but the damage over the last 10 years is going to take years to fix. Thoughts?
Prince of Persia surprised me. I played only the original. I didn't play Sands of Time, but it was fantastically done. I thought it was a pretty good cast. The uncle guy that's there on the poster on the left there, Gandhi. Yeah, Ben Kingsley. That's right. His acting I think was a little weak, but overall it wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad at all.
Yeah, I would consider this and Mortal Kombat to be the two best video game adaptations. I feel like, yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, it definitely left a lot out from the video game series, but what they had in there stayed true to what was in the game series, and they did the whole time traveling thing very well, and it was a fun movie. It wasn't super violent. It was kind of family friendly, but still had enough action in it to make it enjoyable for all audiences, and I think that the director did a fairly good job with it.
Didn't see it.
Sorry.
See it.
So, closing statements. Video game movies shouldn't suck, and what we've learned, I mean, before this, but it's apparent now, is that the steps to making a good video game movie are there. I mean, it may not be a guaranteed hit, but if you follow a certain formula and certain steps, at least you'll have a better history of video game movies, because even some of the more mediocre to bad comic book movies are better than a majority of video game movies, which says a lot. That why don't producers care enough to protect these properties, or why don't the creators care enough to protect these properties?
I think the answer, this is just my theory, is a matter of generation. I was born the year before the NES was available, 2 years after Donkey Kong arrived on the scene. And so, I was in one of the first Nintendo generations where I was born into a world where I didn't know a world without it. And the people that make the decisions about movies and generally have the money and have the power were not part of that generation. They're 40, 50, 60, and maybe they have kids that get into it, but it wasn't that part of their heart. It wasn't part of their childhoods, whereas there's plenty of people that are, old, that were all about comic books in their youth. They sort of get it. So I think that it's just going to be a matter of time before the people in our generation realize, hey, this is because it's like this. Sometimes you can tell that a filmmaker said, there's this beautiful thing and I'm going to show it to the world and say this is beautiful. And in the way that I show them it is, they will realize it is too. As producers of these movies sometimes go, what is this thing? I don't know what it is. How do we sell it? What is it? You know what? Get something else. Hey, this looks kind of like it. Okay, watch this. And it's like, that sucks, dude. That's not what it was in the first place. So once somebody gets to the point where there's enough power centered in the generation of people that understand why these things are important to people like us and the whole cultural vernacular, then I think maybe we will see more stuff like the references in Scott Pilgrim, which were so, even though that movie was whatever it was, there were references in it that were like, I didn't know you could do that in a movie. I didn't know you could have the Zelda fairy theme for a sequence, or, in a movie. I didn't know you could make a reference that is so part of my life in a Hollywood film that makes my jaw drop and go, oh my God, this was made for me. But they'll figure it out one day when we get to the point where we're, old, the people that are really old now die. And, kind of, we all just kind of move up one notch and we're in charge. Sorry, that was a bit of a ramble.
Any closing statements? Excuse me?
There's apparently a new Mortal Kombat movie being made by the guy who did this pretty good web series thing. Yeah.
I'd be behind that, yeah. Okay. Any
I thought it was
closing
awesome.
statements?
I remember when the pitch came out online, it became this big thing because it just appeared on YouTube out of nowhere, and everyone's like, "Whoa, this is actually really good." And I thought that the web series was good for the budget that they had. It was obviously very low budget, but they did backgrounds for all the characters. So you watch that, you know about the characters. So hopefully when the movie comes out, it will be awesome because we're connected to all of the characters, and he proved that he could direct, a Hollywood-style action film and make it look good. You guys?
I like the web series. That was good. Do you want me to
Closing statement.
I can. You can do it. I'll take it. I'll let you do it.
Okay. Well,
All right. We're not going to show. We have no time. Okay. On that note, I want to thank my panel here for contributing to this phenomenon of bad video game movies. Hopefully there's a turning point in the future. As Brent says, I think we're going to be the ones to do it after everyone else dies, which is a positive thing to end on. So, yeah. So, thank you very much for coming. We're from Blue Core Studios. That's Brentalfloss. Check us out at bluecorestudios.com. We have a fundraiser going. We have a 2-disc set on Mega Man for donators, a bunch of swag. We have flyers around and cards, so grab something, props from Mega Man. So we're Blue Core Studios. He's Brentalfloss. Thank you very much for coming on this last day of MAGFest. Peace out.